You can't see.
You work hard.
Imagine waking
You
up
are
tomorrow.
tired.
Nothing around you has
You trade
changed.
your life
the
for a
same room,
paycheck.
the same job,
And
the same
yet at the
family,
end
the
of the
same
month,
problems.
you look at
Yet
your bank
somehow
account and ask
you
the
feel
same
lighter.
terrified
The insults
question.
no longer sting.
Where did it all
Success
go?
no longer makes you arrogant.
You didn't buy a Ferrari.
Failure no longer makes you feel worthless.
You didn't fly to the
Praise
Maldives.
doesn't control you. Criticism
You just
doesn't
lived.
break you. Fear no
Coffee,
longer decides your
subscriptions,
future.
takeout,
What
online
disappeared?
sales.
Not your problems.
Your money is
not your
bleeding out of a
responsibilities.
thousand tiny
Just one
cuts.
invisible thing. Your
You
ego.
are trying to fill a bucket
Most
that has
people
holes
spend
in
their
the
entire
bottom.
lives trying to improve
You think
themselves.
the
They chase
solution
more
is
money,
to earn more money.
respect, a better
You are
body,
wrong.
a bigger house, a more
If you
impressive
pour
title.
more water
They
into a
believe that if
leaking
the
bucket,
outside
you
world
don't get a
changes,
full
peace
bucket.
will finally arrive.
You just get
But
a
what
wet
if the
floor.
opposite is true?
In 1904,
What if the greatest
Japan's
prison
first
is
female
not outside
journalist,
you,
Hani Motoko,
but inside your own
noticed this
mind?
problem in Japanese
And what if a
households.
civilization discovered this
She
truth centuries
realized
ago?
that people were not broke
A
because
truth
they
so
were poor.
powerful that it shaped
They were
warriors,
broke because they
artists,
were asleep.
monks, craftsmen, and
They were
ordinary
spending
people into
money without
individuals who carried
consciousness.
quiet confidence instead
She
of loud
invented
pride.
a weapon to fight this
A
sleep.
truth that has survived earthquakes,
It was a
wars,
simple book
empires,
called Kakeibo.
and the unstoppable rush
It
of modern
translates to
life.
household financial
This
ledger.
story begins in Japan, but
But it is
isn't
not just
really
an
about
accounting
Japan.
book.
It's about a battle every
It is a
human
tool
being
of
fights
Zen
every
discipline.
single day.
It
A
forces
battle
you to
so
stare
silent,
your habits in the face.
most people never realize they're
It
losing.
turns the act of spending money
Because the
from a
ego
mindless
never announces
reflex into
itself.
a
It
deliberate
whispers,
ritual.
it convinces,
The
it
samurai
disguises itself
believed
as
that a
ambition,
warrior who
as
cannot
intelligence,
control his
as
resources
righteousness,
cannot control
as
the battlefield.
self-respect, sometimes even as
If you have
kindness.
no savings,
That's what
you
makes
have
it dangerous.
no armor.
Imagine
If you
holding a
have
glass
debt,
of muddy
you are
water.
fighting with
The
a
harder
chain
you
around
shake
your
it,
neck.
the cloudier it becomes.
Today,
leave it
we
alone,
are going to break
and
the
slowly,
chain.
the water becomes clear again.
We are going
the
to
human
throw
mind
away
works
the
the same
complex
way,
apps and
except
spreadsheets.
most
We
people
are
spend
going
their
to teach
entire
you the
lives
art of the
shaking the
financial
glass.
mirror.
More opinions.
Are you ready to stop bleeding?
More arguments. More
Keith,
comparisons.
the numbing
more
of the
proving.
pain.
More defending.
Phase.
Until they can no longer see reality.
Imagine you are standing in a
only
store.
themselves. Here's the
You want
strange
to buy
part.
a $100
Modern
pair of
society
shoes.
often rewards a healthy
If
ego.
you pay with cash,
be confident,
you have to
stand
physically
out,
take
promote
five
yourself,
$20
build
bills
your
out of your
personal
wallet.
brand, win every
You
argument,
have to hand
never
them
admit
over.
weakness, always appear
You watch them
successful.
leave your hand.
On the surface, it
You
sounds
see your
reasonable,
wallet get
but
thinner.
beneath that advice hides a
You feel
dangerous
a
trap.
tiny pang of
because
loss.
confidence and ego are not the same thing.
This is
confidence
called
is
the pain
quiet.
of pain.
Ego is loud.
This pain is
confidence
good.
learns. Ego already
It is
knows.
your brain's way of
confidence
asking,
creates.
is this
ego
really
competes.
worth it?
Confidence grows stronger
Now,
through truth.
imagine the
Ego
same
survives
purchase
through
with a
illusion,
credit card.
and illusions are expensive.
You tap a
They
piece
cost
of plastic
relationships,
against a machine.
peace, creativity,
Beep.
love, wisdom.
You get the
Sometimes
shoes.
entire lives.
You get
History
the
gives us
dopamine.
endless examples.
But you don't
Powerful
lose
kings
anything.
destroyed kingdoms because they
Your
refused to
wallet
admit
looks
mistakes.
exactly the same.
Brilliant inventors
The
lost
money is
everything because they
invisible.
believed nobody could
You
challenge
have
them.
surgically removed the pain.
Families broke apart over
And
words
because you
that should
removed
never
the
have been
pain,
spoken.
you removed the filter.
Wars began because
Behavioral
someone couldn't bear the
economists
thought
call
of
this
appearing
decoupling.
weak. Yet,
Modern
the battlefield
society
was
is
never
designed
really
to decouple
outside.
the joy
It
of
was
buying
inside.
from the pain of paying.
Long before psychology gave this struggle
Amazon
a name,
one-click Uber rides where you
ancient
just
cultures
hop
had
out.
already been studying it.
Auto
Few explored
subscriptions.
it more deeply than Japan.
They are trying to
not through
sedate you.
speeches, not through theories.
They want you to be a mindless
but through daily
consumer
life,
who spends money
through
in a
tea,
trance, and it
through
is
gardening,
working.
through
You are
swordsmanship,
swiping your way
through
into
calligraphy,
poverty because your
through
brain
silence.
literally does not
They
register
discovered
that
something
you are spending
surprising.
money.
Freedom is not the
Hani
ability to do
Motoko
whatever you
understood
want.
this danger
Freedom
over
is the
100
ability to
years
remain
ago.
unchanged by what tries to
She
control your
taught that
emotions.
to master money,
that
you
idea
must
sounds
recouple
simple
the pain.
until life tests
You
it.
must make the
Someone
invisible
insults you
visible.
online. Someone gets
This is
promoted
why
instead of
cake
you.
requires a pen
A
and
neighbor
paper.
buys a nicer car. A
It
friend
forbids
forgets your
apps.
birthday. Someone ignores
It
your
forbids
message.
Excel.
Suddenly,
Why?
a voice appears.
Because
How dare
typing
they?
100 into a spreadsheet is
I
just
deserve
data
better.
entry.
They should respect
It feels
me.
like nothing.
I'll prove them wrong.
Writing
That
100
voice
by
feels
hand
personal.
requires focus.
It feels like you.
It engages the
But
reticular
is it?
activating system.
Or is it simply the ego
When
trying
you
to
write
protect
down
an
every
image
single
that
yen
doesn't
or dollar
actually
you spend
exist?
at the end of the day,
This question
you are
has
forcing your
fascinated
brain to
philosophers
relive
for
the
thousands of
transaction.
years. But then,
You are
a
forcing
curious story
yourself to
began spreading
acknowledge the
across
trade.
Japan. It wasn't about a
I
famous
traded 2
emperor or a
hours of my
legendary
life
general.
for this
It wasn't
coffee.
even about someone
Was it worth it?
extraordinary. It was about a young
Sometimes the
man
answer
who
is
wanted
yes.
nothing more than to become important.
Often the answer is
he dreamed
no.
of being admired, respected,
The pen
remembered.
is the sword that
Every
cuts
morning,
through the marketing
he
fog.
imagined crowds applauding his
The 4
achievements.
buckets.
Every night, he feared
Most
dying
people
unnoticed.
fail at budgeting
His greatest
because
fear
they
wasn't
make it too
failure, it was being
complicated.
ordinary.
They have
If that
30
sounds familiar,
categories.
it should.
Groceries,
Because his
gas,
story is our story.
insurance,
Today,
Netflix,
success is
gym,
measured in
cat
followers,
food.
likes,
It is
views,
overwhelming.
awards,
It
luxury,
feels like tax
recognition.
accounting.
Even when people claim
So
they
you
don't
quit
care,
after 3
part of them
days.
often does. The ego
Kakeibo
keeps
strips
score
everything down to the
constantly.
bone.
Who earns more?
It
Who
argues
looks
that
younger?
every
Who
penny you
travels
spend
further?
fits
Who has a
into only
happier
one of
family?
4 buckets.
Who gets invited? Who gets
The
ignored?
goal is not to track what you
Comparison
bought,
becomes a
but why
full-time
you bought
job.
it.
The strange
1.
thing is,
Survival
no one ever
needs.
wins. Because there's always someone
Rent,
richer,
groceries,
smarter, more
utilities,
attractive, more
medicine.
successful. The finish line
If you
keeps
don't
moving,
spend this,
like
you
chasing the
die or end
horizon.
up on the street.
You can spend your
Two
entire life
optional
running
wants:
and never
restaurants,
arrive.
new clothes,
Japanese
drinks,
philosophy
hobbies.
noticed this centuries ago.
If you don't spend
Instead of
this,
asking,
you will be bored,
how do I become
but you will
greater than
survive.
everyone else?
3.
Many masters
Culture,
asked a different
education,
question. What
books,
part of me keeps
courses,
needing to be greater?
museums,
Everything changes
cinema.
when the question changes.
This is
because
the
now
uniquely
the enemy
Japanese
isn't another
category.
person. The enemy
It
is an
distinguishes
illusion.
entertainment
Imagine
distraction
carrying a
from culture
backpack
growth.
since childhood. Every
For
year
extra
someone secretly
unexpected
places
car
another
repairs,
stone inside.
wedding
Expectations,
gifts, medical emergencies.
fear, pride,
Why does this
regret,
matter?
jealousy, titles,
Because most
opinions,
Westerners mix optional and
status.
culture into one
Eventually,
big blob called
the
fun.
weight feels normal. You
And
forget
they
you're
mix
carrying
survival
it.
and
Then one
optional
day someone
into a
asks a
blob
simple
called
question.
lifestyle.
What if you put the backpack
You tell
down?
yourself, I need this
At
$7
first,
latte to
that sounds
survive the
impossible.
morning.
You've worn it your
No,
entire
you
life.
need caffeine.
Who would you be without it?
A caffeine
Here's where
pill
things become
costs
uncomfortable.
10.
Many people believe removing
latte
the pill
is
means
optional.
becoming weak, passive,
You tell
invisible,
yourself, I need
unable
this
to
new
succeed.
suit for work.
Japan
Is
tells
your
a different
old suit
story.
full of holes?
Some of history's greatest
No.
warriors trained not
Then
to
it is
strengthen their
optional.
ego, but to weaken it.
When you
That
sit
sounds
down with your
backwards,
pen
after
at the
all.
end of the month,
Wouldn't a
you
warrior
have to sort
need
your
enormous
receipts
pride?
into these 4 boxes.
Surprisingly,
This
no,
forces
because
you to be
pride
honest.
hesitates. Pride panics.
You might look at your
Pride
optional
fears
bucket and see
humiliation.
it is huge.
A calm mind reacts faster,
While your
sees
culture
more clearly,
bucket is
makes
empty.
fewer
This
mistakes.
is a mirror.
This lesson appeared again
It
and
tells
again,
you
not
are
only in
feeding your
martial
body,
arts, but
but
in
you are
craftsmanship.
starving your mind.
A master carpenter
It tells
never
you
believed
you are
he had
buying
nothing
pleasure,
left to
but
learn.
you are not
say,
buying
a tea
growth.
master practiced
The
the same
samurai
movements
does
for
not
decades.
guess where his arrows
A
went.
calligrapher repeated one
He counts
brushstroke
them.
thousands of times.
He
Not
knows
because they
exactly
lack
how many
talent,
were
because
used
they
for
knew
hunting,
perfection disappears
survival,
the moment the
and how
ego
many were
claims it has
wasted shooting
arrived.
at the sky.
There is an old Japanese
Optional.
saying that every
By
expert
simplifying
remains
the
a
data
student.
into these 4
The
pillars,
words are simple.
you stop drowning
Their
in
meaning
numbers.
is enormous.
You start
The moment
seeing
you
the
believe
shape
you've
of your
reached the
life.
top, growth
And once you
quietly
see the
ends.
shape, you can
The
change
ego
it.
loves conclusions.
You cannot
Wisdom
drive a
loves
car
questions.
by only looking at
Modern
where you have
neuroscience
been.
has begun
You
uncovering
must
something
look through the
fascinating.
windshield.
Our brains
Keiko
naturally build
demands that you
stories
sit
about who
down
we
on the
are.
first day of the
I'm
month and answer
successful.
4
I'm
specific
unlucky.
questions.
I'm smarter than others. I'm always
This is
overlooked.
not a
I'm the
suggestion.
victim. I'm the hero.
It is a contract.
These stories become identities.
1.
And
How much
identities
money do I
become
have
prisons.
available?
Because
Your
once you
fixed
believe a
income.
story, you unconsciously
2.
protect it.
How much would I like to save?
Even when it's hurting you.
The target.
Someone challenges your
3.
opinion.
How much
you don't
must I
hear
spend?
new information. You
Your
hear a
fixed
threat.
survival costs.
Someone points out a mistake. You don't
4.
see an
How can I
opportunity,
improve?
you see an attack.
The promise.
The ego would rather stay
The
wrong
magic is in question.
than feel
2.
embarrassed.
In
Think
the
about
West,
that.
the
How
equation
many
is income
arguments,
spending
how many
equals
broken
savings.
friendships, how many lost
You spend
opportunities
whatever you want, and if there are
exist
scraps
because
left
someone
over,
couldn't say
you
3
save
simple
them.
words? I was
Usually,
wrong.
there are no scraps.
Those words sound small, but they
In
require
Kakeibo, the
extraordinary
equation is
strength.
income.
Here's the
Savings
paradox.
equals
The
spending.
strongest people rarely need to
You
prove they're
decide your
strong.
savings goal first.
The wisest people rarely
You treat
announce
your
their
future
wisdom.
self
The
like a
happiest people
landlord who
rarely
demands
convince
rent.
others they're happy.
You pay the rent
Because
to your
peace
savings
has nothing
account
to
immediately.
advertise. Noise always comes from
Whatever
insecurity.
is left,
Silence
that is your
often
budget
comes
for the
from
month.
understanding.
If it runs
Then-
out, it runs out.
But then,
You
one
eat
Japanese
rice.
master decided to teach
This
this lesson in
creates
a way no
artificial
student could ever
scarcity.
forget. He didn't give a lecture.
Parkinson's law
He didn't
states
write a
work
book.
expands to fill the
Instead,
time available.
he invited one
The
ambitious
financial
young man to a
corollary is
small
spending
mountain
expands
temple.
to fill the money
The student
available.
believed he was finally
If you
about
have
to learn the secret of
$2,000 in your
greatness.
checking account,
He had
you
no
will find
idea.
a way to
Everything he
spend
believed about himself
$2,000.
was about to fall apart.
Your brain will
and
invent
strangely,
needs.
that destruction
But
would
if you
become the
move
beginning of true
$500
freedom.
to a savings account
mountain
on
was
day
waiting.
1 and you only
The
see
lesson was waiting.
$1,500,
But first,
you will magically find a way to survive on
The student would have to discover the one enemy he
$1,500.
had carried there
You
all
won't
along.
starve.
The empty cup.
You will just
the
be
climb
more
began
creative.
before sunrise.
You will
Cold
cook
mist
more.
drifted through the cedar
You will
trees.
walk instead
the
of
mountain
Uber.
was silent, not
The
the
constraint
silence of
creates the
emptiness.
discipline.
The
The
silence
final
of something
question,
ancient.
how can I improve,
The young
is the
man tightened
mechanism
the strap on
upon
his bag.
self-reflection.
His legs already ached.
It stops you
his
from
mind
being a
was
robot.
racing. This was it.
You look at last
the
month.
journey that would make him
Did I
extraordinary.
spend too much on
For
takeout?
years, he had imagined this
Did I
moment.
buy a
He had
subscription
read
I
every
never
book he could
used?
find, memorized famous sayings,
don't beat
practiced
yourself
speaking
up.
with confidence,
The samurai
collected
does
knowledge
not
like
cry
trophies.
over spilled milk.
He believed wisdom was something
You simply
gathered,
set a specific
one
rule
lesson
for
at a
next
time,
month.
one achievement at
Next
a time,
month,
one
I will bring
victory
lunch
at a time.
to work on Tuesdays
Surely,
and Thursdays.
the old master would recognize
Small,
his dedication.
actionable,
Surely
clear.
he would be praised.
You are not not just
But the
tracking your
mountain had
decline.
different plans. Hours
You are
passed, the path
engineering
grew
your
steeper.
ascent.
The trees became
The war
thicker,
on
the air
debt.
became cooler.
To the
Finally,
samurai,
a
debt
small
was
wooden
not
gate
just a
appeared.
financial number.
Beyond it stood a simple temple.
was a spiritual
no golden
shackle.
statues, no magnificent
A
buildings.
warrior who owed
no
money
crowds,
to a merchant
just
was
weathered
not
wood.
free.
A stone path,
His
a
sword
quiet
belonged
garden.
to someone else.
It looked almost forgotten. The
His
young man
time
frowned.
belonged to someone else.
Can this really be the place?
In modern terms,
expected
if you have
greatness
debt,
to look
you are
impressive.
not going to work to build your
Instead,
dream.
it looked ordinary.
You are going to
An
work to
elderly
pay
monk
for the
swept
past you.
fallen leaves with slow,
You are
careful
stuck in a
movements.
time loop,
The broom
paying
barely
for
made
a
a sound.
dinner you ate
The young
3
man
years
waited.
ago.
Surely the monk would
Kakeibo
stop.
declares
Surely
war
he
on
would
this
greet such an
slavery.
important visitor.
And the
But
weapon it
sweeping
uses
continued.
is tactile
Minute after
limitation.
minute, light as fry. The young
The
man's
biggest
patience
problem
began
with
to
credit
fade.
cards
He
is
cleared
that
his
they
throat.
have no bottom.
Nothing.
You can
He
keep
spoke
swiping
louder.
until you hit a
I've
limit
come
that
to
is
study
usually
under the
way
great
higher than your
master.
salary.
The monk nodded gently.
Kakeibo suggests
Without
a
saying
radical
a word,
solution for your
he
problem
continued
buckets,
sweeping.
usually food
The young
or
man's
entertainment.
excitement slowly became irritation.
cash
Didn't this
envelope
old
system.
man understand? He had
On
traveled
the
for
first
days.
of the month,
He
you
deserved at
withdraw
least
the
a proper
exact
welcome.
amount of cash you
Finally,
budgeted for that category.
the monk leaned the broom against the
You
wall.
put it
He
in
looked
an
into the young
envelope
man's
labeled
eyes.
groceries.
His face carried no
When
judgment.
you go to the store, you
Only
pay
calm.
from the envelope.
You must be tired. The young
As the
man
month
smiled
goes
at
on,
last.
the envelope
Recognition.
gets
Yes.
thinner.
Come.
You
We'll
can
have
feel
tea.
the scarcity.
Tea? The
When
young
the
man blinked.
envelope is
He expected
empty,
lessons,
the spending
secret
stops.
techniques, ancient wisdom.
There is no
Instead,
overdraft.
tea. Still,
There is no
he
I'll
followed.
pay it later.
Inside the small room sat a low wooden
The
table,
physical
2
reality
cups,
of the
a
empty
kettle,
paper
nothing
envelope
more.
is a hard wall
The
that
monk
your brain
poured steaming
respects in
tea
a
into
way
the
it
first
never
cup.
respects
The
a
rich
digital
aroma
limit.
filled the room. Then
But what
he
about
kept
the debt
pouring.
you
The tea
already
reached
have?
the rim, then flowed over
Western
the edge. It
logic
spilled
says
onto the
pay
table,
off the loan
then
with
onto
the
the
highest
floor.
interest
The young
rate
man watched
first.
in disbelief. The monk never
The
stopped.
avalanche
More tea,
method.
more spilling. Finally,
Mathematically,
the young man
this is
burst
correct.
out. Stop!
But Kakeibo is not
The cup
about
is
math.
full. It can't
is
hold
about
anymore.
morale.
The monk quietly placed
If you
the kettle
attack
down.
the
He
biggest
smiled.
mountain first,
So are you.
you will fight
the room
for 2
became
years
silent.
and see barely
the young man
any
waited for the
progress.
rest. Nothing came. That was
You
the
will
lesson.
get discouraged.
At first, he didn't
You will
understand.
quit.
He felt almost insulted.
Instead,
I'm here to learn.
use the snowball
I've studied
method.
for years.
List your debts from smallest
I've worked
balance
harder
to
than most
largest
people.
balance.
I've earned this opportunity.
Ignore the interest
The monk
rates.
nodded. I know.
Attack the
And
smallest
that's
enemy
why
first.
your cup is full.
Kill the
The
$500
words landed like
credit
stones.
card balance.
The young man wanted to argue.
Destroy it
He wanted
completely.
to explain everything he knew.
The moment you cross
But
the
something
debt off your
stopped him.
list, you feel a
Because
surge
deep
of
inside,
victory.
he sensed the monk was right.
You freed up cash
Have you ever
flow.
noticed how difficult it is to
You
change
feel
someone's
powerful.
mind? Not because
You
they
take
lack
that energy and the
intelligence,
money
but
and
because
attack
their
the next
identity
smallest
is
debt.
protecting an opinion.
The snowball grows.
When the ego hears new information,
how you win
it
a
asks
war.
only one question.
You
Does
don't
this make
start
me look
by
wrong?
attacking the enemy general.
If the answer is yes,
You start by
the door
taking the
closes.
outpost, then the village,
Modern
then
psychology
the
calls
fort.
this confirmation bias.
You build momentum.
We naturally search for
Debt
evidence that
relies on your
supports what we already
hopelessness to
believe.
survive.
We ignore the rest. Not
It
because
relies
we're
on you
evil, because
looking
the
at the
brain
total
loves
number,
certainty.
feeling
Certainty
crushed,
feels
and
safe.
ordering a
Curiosity
pizza to
feels
feel
risky.
better.
But here's the strange
snowball
part.
method gives
Every
you
great
hope,
discovery
and a hopeful
began with
warrior
someone
is a
admitting,
dangerous warrior.
I might be wrong.
The quiet minder Muko
Science
did not
advances
invent
this way.
Kakeibo
Medicine
because she
advances
wanted
this way.
everyone to be
Relationships heal this way.
She invented
Personal
it because
growth
she
begins
wanted
this
everyone
way,
to be calm.
not with certainty.
There is a specific
With
type
humility.
of anxiety that comes
the
from
monk
money.
lifted the overflowing cup.
It is a background hum.
What enters a full cup?
It is there
The
when
young
you
man
wake up.
remained silent. The monk answered
It is
his own
there
question.
when you are trying to
Nothing.
sleep.
Knowledge
Can
is
I
the same.
afford this?
If you arrive already convinced,
Do I have enough
you
for
leave
rent?
unchanged.
What if the
Outside,
car
a
breaks
gentle
down?
breeze moved through the bamboo.
This hum
the
eats your
leaves whispered
creativity.
against one another.
It
The
eats
young
your
man
patience.
listened. For the first time that
It
day,
eats your joy.
he noticed the sound.
A mind
Earlier,
filled with
his
financial
thoughts had been
noise
too
cannot
loud.
be present for a
The monk
sunset
stood.
or a conversation or a lover.
Walk with me.
Kakeibo's
They
silence
entered the
is the
garden.
hum.
It wasn't perfectly arranged.
When you write
Tiny
down your
weeds
numbers,
pushed between
you are
stones.
not just doing
One lantern
accounting.
leaned slightly. A few
You are
leaves rested on the
performing an
moss.
exorcism.
The young man pointed. You should remove
You are
those.
dragging
the
the
monk
ghosts
smiled.
out of the
Why?
closet and
They
putting
don't
them
belong.
on paper.
The monk picked up
Once
a
they
fallen
are on
maple leaf.
paper,
He held
they
it in
are
his
just
hand.
math.
Does Autumn
And
apologize?
math can be solved.
The young man frowned.
The vague
No.
terror of I'm broke
Then why
becomes
should
the
this leaf?
specific problem of
The
I
monk
have a
placed it gently
$200
back on the
deficit.
ground. Nature never
You can
tries to
fix a
impress anyone.
deficit.
It simply
You cannot
becomes what
fix
it
a
is.
terror.
The words
Ultimately,
echoed in the
this
young man's
practice
mind.
teaches you the
How much
concept
of his
of
life
taru,
had been
knowing
spent
enough.
trying to impress people?
Modern
The right
capitalism
clothes, the right
screams at you,
words, the
more,
right achievements,
newer, faster.
the right image.
It
Even
tells
his
you that
kindness
you are incomplete
had
without the
sometimes
new
been
iPhone.
performed, not given freely.
Kakeibo
The ego
whispers,
is clever.
"You have enough."
It can turn generosity into
When you
performance.
cut out the mindless spending on the
Humility
optional
into pride,
bucket, you
success
realize
into
something
addiction,
shocking.
even spirituality into competition.
actually
Someone
want that
meditates
stuff.
longer. Someone reads more
You
philosophy.
were just
Someone
buying it to
appears
numb yourself
wiser.
or to impress people
Suddenly,
you don't like.
the ego returns
When you
wearing
stop
different
buying
clothes.
things for them, you
The
suddenly
monk
have
seemed to
money
read
for
his
you.
thoughts. The ego
You
never
have money for
disappears
the
by
culture
changing
bucket.
costumes. It
You
disappears
have
when it
money
is
for
seen.
books, for travel,
That
for
sentence
learning a
stayed with him
language.
because most enemies
You
hide.
become a
The
richer
ego
human
hides
being
best of
even
all.
if you are spending less
It
money.
becomes invisible precisely
The
because
samurai
it
does not
speaks in
need a
your
golden
own
sword.
voice. I deserve more.
He needs a
They
sharp
don't
one.
appreciate me. I'm better. I'm
He does
worse.
not
I
need a
need to prove
castle.
myself.
He needs a defensible position.
The voice never stops
Your
talking.
money is your energy.
The problem is, most people think the voice is
Stop
who they
letting
are.
it leak out of
But
the
what if
holes
it's
in your
only
pocket?
noise? Imagine
Honor it.
standing beside a river.
Count it.
Leaves float past. Some are
Direct it.
large, some are small.
Don't let your money
You watch
control
them drift
you.
away. Now
Be the
imagine
master.
trying to grab every leaf.
So
You'd
tell me,
exhaust yourself.
what is one
Thoughts are the
specific
same.
optional?
Most don't need to be caught. They only need to be noticed. The monk led the young man to a shallow pond. The water reflected the sky perfectly until the monk touched it. Ripples spread across the surface. The reflection disappeared. When the mind is disturbed, you don't see reality. You see distortion. He waited. Then the water slowly became still again. The clouds returned. The trees returned. The sky returned. Peace is not created. It is revealed. The young man stared into the pond. His own reflection appeared. For the first time, he didn't see confidence. He didn't see intelligence. He didn't even see ambition. He saw someone who had spent years chasing approval. Someone terrified of being ordinary. Someone who believed his worth depended on being admired. The realization hurt, but strangely, it also felt freeing, because if that story wasn't true, perhaps another life was possible. As the sun began to set, the temple bells echoed across the valley. Their sound rolled through the mountains like distant thunder. The monk lit a small lantern. Its warm glow barely reached beyond the doorway, yet it pushed back the darkness around it. "You don't need to light the whole mountain," the monk said softly. "Only the next step." The young man looked up. For the first time since arriving, he stopped wondering how to become great. Instead, he asked a different question. Who would I be without needing to become greater than anyone? The monk smiled. He had been waiting for that question, but the answer would not come through words. It would come through a challenge, one that seemed impossibly simple. For the next 30 days, the young man would not study, he would not debate, he would not seek praise, he would not even touch a sword. Instead, he would be asked to perform the smallest, most ordinary tasks imaginable: cleaning, cooking, carrying water, sweeping leaves. The young man couldn't understand why. How could such simple work possibly defeat something as powerful as the ego? The answer was hidden inside those ordinary moments. And before long, one simple broom would teach him more about freedom than all the books he'd ever read. The broom that changed everything. The next morning began before the sun. A wooden bell echoed through the mountain. Once, twice, then silence. The young man opened his eyes. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then reality returned. Today, he thought, the real training begins. Surely the master would finally reveal the ancient secrets he had traveled so far to learn. He hurried outside. The monk was already waiting. Without a word, the old man handed him a broom. The young man looked at it, then at the monk, then back at the broom. "Where is today's lesson?" The monk simply smiled. "It is in your hands." The young man frowned. "This?" "Yes." He waited for an explanation. None came. The monk quietly walked away. The young man stood alone, a broom in his hands, a courtyard covered with fallen leaves. This couldn't be right. He hadn't climbed a mountain to become a cleaner. He had come to become wise. Still, he began sweeping. At first, his movements were careless, fast, impatient. He pushed leaves into uneven piles, dust filled the air, twigs scattered across the stones. Every few minutes, he glanced around. Was the monk watching? Was this some kind of hidden test? An hour passed. The work felt meaningless. His shoulders ached. His thoughts became louder. I should be learning something important. I'm wasting my time. Anyone could do this. I deserve better. The broom continued moving. But the real battle was no longer happening on the ground. It was happening inside his mind. That is the strange thing about ordinary work. It exposes extraordinary thoughts. Most people believe they know themselves until they are asked to do something that brings them no recognition. Wash dishes, stand in a queue, wait in traffic, answer the same question for the 100th time. Suddenly, patience disappears, frustration appears. The ego whispers, "This is beneath you." But beneath whom? Who exactly is being insulted? The monk returned just before noon. He looked around the courtyard. Then he quietly scattered another handful of leaves across the clean stones. The young man stared in disbelief. "You just made it dirty again." "Yes, but I already cleaned it." The monk nodded. "And tomorrow the wind will do the same." The young man's voice sharpened. "Then what's the point?" The old man looked toward the forest. Does the tree stop growing because winter will come? The question hung in the air. The young man had no answer. The monk picked up a single leaf. Everything in nature repeats. The sun rises, the rain falls, the seasons change. Yet only humans ask, "Why must I do this again?" The young man looked down at the broom. For the first time, he realized he wasn't angry about the leaves. He was angry because no one would admire him for removing them. That thought unsettled him. How much of his life had been driven by applause? How many choices had he made? Not because they were meaningful, but because they were visible? The ego has a remarkable appetite. Feed it once,